Greetings, and welcome to When the Moment Chooses You. I am your host, Coach Charlene, and I am so delighted today to have back on the show Christina Eskridge. And it is an honor to have you here, Christina. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you, Coach Charlene.
Yeah, I was checking out like the podcast and how it was doing and things like that, and I happened to see your segment, and a lot of people loved what you had to say. So I was like, that is
Thank
so
you.
awesome. So now I want to know, first of all, why don't you tell us who you are? Because I'm not going to go into why I started the podcast because I'll do it real quick just in case there's a first timer that's watching. I started this podcast literally out of in 2020, really because of the murder of George Floyd in particular, and all of the other things that were going on in the year 2020. So I found my voice, and there I began to start sharing my story to bring transformation, and that's literally what I've been doing. So the podcast started in 22. I'm 2 years old now, and I'm going to revisit Miss Christina because she is a trailblazer and a change agent in her own right. And so tell us a little bit about who you are first, Christina, and then we'll jump into some conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Charlene, for having me. I'm Christina Eskridge. I am the founder and executive director of Elevate Theater Company. We're a company that is looking to explore health and well-being through the art of storytelling. And I started Elevate also in 2020. The intention was to start with a big in-person festival and an opportunity for people to gather and be together and talk about reproductive health and reproductive justice. And as we all know, that plan got a little wrench in it because those in person gatherings were no longer available to us. So we pivoted and we started online, and we were doing what I like to call lovingly Zoom theater for 2 years, so that we could bring live productions streamed from Zoom to YouTube to the living room near you. So that there was an opportunity for us to still have these important conversations about public health and about in a theatrical way, without having to gather and risk COVID exposure. So in the last 4 years, we just had our fourth anniversary. I have,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. We've gone from a solely online theater company to a hybrid offering organization. We do three different programs. We have our signature program, which is a play that is original and about a public health topic, and that is paired with a panel of experts in the field of public health that we're touching upon, so that the audience can learn more, dive deeper, ask questions, and leave feeling more informed than when they came in. The second offering is our storytelling workshops. And these are an opportunity for groups of all sizes to get together and talk, work on their authentic communication, work on the ways in which they are working together. So it can be team building. It can also be for individuals who are interested in speeches, delivering speeches, or have conference panels that they're sitting on, and they want to, improve their ability to share and articulate what they'd like to share with their audience. But it's really an opportunity to leverage basic acting technique that anyone has access to improve your communication so that you're healthily engaging with all. And those four basic things, just so you all know, you don't have to be an actor to use them: breath, posture, active listening, and text generation, and then text delivery, right? So making sure that we've got text in there. And all of those have health benefits. When you have a breath practice, there's a health benefit to lowering blood pressure. And you know all of this, Charlene, you could probably tell me
Yeah.
better than I know it. Lowering blood pressure, lowering heart rate, increasing those oxygen rich breaths to the brain helps us stay in our executive functioning. So we try to pair the storytelling technique in the workshop with the health benefit to the individual and to the group. And then lastly, we also have done a little bit of consulting. And I've been working for the last 2 years with the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. They have a arts and well-being team that is taking some of their programming and bringing it to the community by partnering with health organizations. And I've been helping them stand up some of those programs, evaluate some of those programs. Are they getting to those target audiences? Are they really executing on their mission? And it's been really wonderful to see large cultural institutions taking on this idea that they are also a part of the health ecosystem of our communities. So that's what's been happening over the last 4 years.
Wow.
It's been pretty crazy. Lots,
Well,
lots going on.
that's really awesome. I'm wondering, where did this passion come from? When we think about it, because you have like a lot of passion around it. So tell me your why. How did you get to this space where this is what you knew you were supposed to be doing?
I think I may have shared this in the first episode we did, but if I didn't, I should have. And if I did, I'll give an abridged version. But the main spark for Elevate Theater Company was, I had been working for over a decade on very parallel tracks. I was in public health and working at Kaiser Permanente and other organizations, consulting in healthcare, hospital administration, sort of worrying about efficiency, quality, employee engagement, things of that nature. And then at the same time, I was also working in the theater and I was performing in theaters across the country. I was doing a lot of work in, I started directing, started to kind of dabble in playwriting and things like that. And it was hard to envision these two parallel tracks sort of meeting or intersecting in some way. And then I performed in a show that was called Up and Away, and it was at the Lincoln Center Theater in their educational theater department. And it blew my mind. It was specifically for children with autism and their families, and it was this intersection of theater and public health in a way that was really beautiful. Because of course we were not, maybe not of course, but we were not curing or had no sort of ideas that we were going to impact autism, but we were impacting the community that has autism, right? We were creating a
Right.
space where they could come and experience the theater. We could rewrite the narratives of where they were acceptable to be, right? Building community, inviting them in. And this particular piece was devised. And so we worked with students who have autism to create the play and then put it on for them and their families. And it was centered around what's called the Big Umbrella Festival at Lincoln Center. And that is a festival that's bringing in companies that are doing work around neurodiversity and different abilities. And they're really catering to that audience. So you didn't have to necessarily sit in the seat, in the row, in the big theater, and we perform and you clap and all of that. It was very interactive, very devised, very improvised. And that's when the spark came for Elevate. It was like, oh, theater can be so much more than entertainment. It can be so much more than a passive audience experience. It can really be something that inspires, that educates, and that builds community and sparks action for the future.
Wow, that's really powerful. And that's actually what I was going to ask you. Like, what do you see? I mean, how do you see, for instance, your company impacting our future? What are the different things that we can do really to change what we're seeing now? Because our sometimes it looks a little bleak out here. And so,
It does,
what
right?
can, yes, trying to say that really positively. But I mean, I just hear all of the passion and all of the intention that you have for the business and to impact autism or even the thoughts and the conversations around autism is pretty amazing. So, what do you see for the future?
I mean, Elevate is public health theater. I'm starting to use that term more and more because when I think of public health, I think of everything from bike lanes to clean water to our anti-smoking campaigns to where we live, anything that impacts where we live, work, and play. And when I think about that, there's really no topic that's untouchable for us, which is
Yeah,
exciting. But
yeah,
it is also challenging to then say, okay, if anything could be the topic, then how do we decide where to go? And what's really beautiful about today's world is there are some major topics that we want to talk about, right? Mental
right.
health is one of those
Yes,
things, especially in the wake of COVID. Um, Gun violence is one of those things.
Right.
AI and its impact in medicine, but also its impact on creativity. Those are places that we want to go, and the world is going there. So we get to highlight and operate in the contemporary, like zeitgeist of what's happening in the world, right? We get to be a part of that conversation. We get to bring those experts to the fore so that audience members who aren't necessarily thinking about the impact of AI on creativity or AI on their medical care can then start to go, oh, that's something interesting. I might want to learn more. Let me ask a question, or let me just absorb this and take the call to action at the end of the panel discussion. And I'm going to go read this other article, or I'm going to go email this organization, or I'm going to sit and talk with my family about how we want to leverage AI in our household and what kinds of things we are interested in, having it be a part of our own conversation, our own narrative. So I think, the future is really dictated by where society is going and the big conversations that are happening both in the news and amongst our friends and at the coffee table, right? Or at
Right.
the breakfast table. But I also think that the future has to include the arts. I'm
Yes.
super passionate about theater specifically, but it doesn't matter to me if you are painting, if you are um, doing sculpture, if you are even just taking walks through nature, right? And or if you're a gardener, right? When I think of art, I think of the most expansive term, and I really include our culinary arts, our aesthetics, gardening, magic, right? All of these things are art forms that we can engage in either as observers or as participants in a more active fashion. And I think the future really requires that we engage in the arts differently, that we remember that participating in the arts in some way, shape, or form is a health behavior. And that's something that is as good as going to the gym, right? It's going to
Yes.
support your cognitive function, it's going to support your physical function, it's going to build community and keep you from being isolated. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons why the arts are important for our health and wellness.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, what do you see for those people that are like still in that burnout spot? Because we know that's huge. Do you guys do things around burnout?
Yeah, we do. I actually, that's so funny you asked. I was just on the Health Equity Action Network panel in San Francisco about burnout specifically, right? And one thing that I did that was pretty, I tried out a new idea on everybody, and it was a laughing workshop. And I'm not a comedian, so I don't pretend to be the funniest person, but I did try to relate folks to the laughter, the different types of laughter that we have in our discourse, right? When you think about the person who can't get off Zoom, or get off mute when you're on Zoom, right? And there's sort of like, yeah, you're giving me the giggle, right? Like there's a
Right.
little bit of like, oh my God, right? And
Right.
sometimes it's you and you're so embarrassed and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I like, and then the pressure, right? And everybody's frantic. There's something very funny about us being online and not being able to navigate the tool as proficiently as we might want to. There's something very funny about thinking about that fake sort of like conference laugh, or that in the office laugh that you've got to do because you're trying to appease or trying to what, right? we
Yeah.
we all can relate to these things, and when you think about
Right.
breath, it's really an embodied or excuse me, when you think about laughter, it's really an embodied breath practice because you have a very specific posture when you laugh. You could be this way, you could be this way, you could be, out like slapping your
You're
body,
right.
right? There's lots of physicality, but you're also, again, bringing in those oxygen rich breaths. You're activating that parasympathetic nervous system. You're, engaging in an activity that's really important for your well-being and to combat burnout. So we tried to relate, art making, art participation as one tool, but also just those very simple things. Again, breath, postural awareness, active listening. These are all things that we can do on a daily basis. And I would encourage someone who feels burnt out once a day. turn on your favorite danceable song. Don't turn on your sad song. Turn on your favorite danceable song and turn off your camera, get up out of your desk, and for 3 minutes and 30 seconds or however long that song is, you groove to the beat. It
That's
will
awesome.
add endorphins, it'll lift your mood, it'll get you to smile, like it'll do so much. And I'm not saying that that is the cure all for burnout, obviously, but it is something that I feel like burnout eats joy for breakfast, right? And we need to add
Right.
more joy into our lives.
Yeah, I love that. That is beautiful. And it's so simple. It seems like really
Yeah.
simple, but to be able to get people to, so I think, I guess that's my question. Like, in, say we're in a Zoom room,
Hmm.
and you got a bunch of burnt out folks. So you would then probably offer something like that in the session.
Yeah. So if it were a workshop from Elevate to a particular group, I would
Yeah.
try to relate it to their work, right? So
Okay.
if it's a group of administrators at a hospital, right? They're all like upper level leadership and they've been away from the bedside for a while. We might do a visualization activity to ground them in why they started this work and remember back to your best day at the bedside or something like that, right? So we can
Right.
really remember our why. You asked me the
Yeah.
why at the beginning, right? It's
Yes.
really a grounding thing. But if I'm in a group of students, we're not gonna do that visualization activity. We're probably gonna laugh, or we're gonna, do something a little bit more along their lines, right? Turn on the music. Maybe we all dance together. Maybe we lead our teams in a communal stretch before we start a meeting. I use the song as an example because they're very short, and when you think about how often you get on Instagram or LinkedIn or any social media platform, how much time you spend just scrolling and reading through other people's day or other people's
Right.
posts. You can spare 3 minutes to stretch your
Absolutely.
body and to have a smile on your face and maybe like do a little groove. So, if it was an Elevate workshop, it would be very customized to the organization and the people in the room so that we're really speaking their language and we try
Right.
really hard to learn people's language so that we're not say, we don't want anybody to feel like, oh, theater's not for me, right? We want them to feel like theater is welcoming. They're a part of this community too. But if it's you like leading a group, please turn on the radio. Ask people what their favorite joke is. Ask people to bring a drawing from their children, to the Zoom room, or a drawing that speaks to them to the Zoom room. Bring art into your Zoom room. You could do it for 1 minute and it would really vastly improve both, I think, your engagement with people, but also people's moods in the way that they're engaging with the work.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I'm curious. So you've been in business now for 4 years.
Ah!
I know, that's like amazing. You're a survivor. So with that being said, what has been like the biggest challenges that you faced
Mm.
from going from an employee to an entrepreneur?
Charlene, that is such a great question. I often say that I am perpetually in year one of a job. Because you know how year one, you're like, you're
Yeah.
learning people's names, you're learning the lingo, you're learning the
Yeah.
things you have to do, and like, oh, this form is filled out in this way, and this, so every day there's something new that I learn, right? That is like, oh, huh, okay, didn't know that before, but now I know,
Yes.
and I'm sure tomorrow there'll be something else, right? Um, so it does, challenges are really what you make of them, I think. But oftentimes it is just the challenge of new information, right? And learning and having the bandwidth to absorb that information. I recently brought on an assistant who has changed my whole way of being because she's able to take certain tasks off my plate. And she's done something really incredible. She's been able to schedule on my calendar And for some reason, I respect her scheduling more than my own, right? Like there's something about having that other person do it that means you
Right.
actually follow. But she has scheduled things like learning time. So if I have something I have to absorb and learn, I've got a new like pathway in QuickBooks I have to figure out, or there's an organization I want to apply for a grant for, but I don't really understand the ins and outs of it. I've got time scheduled to do that task so that I'm not trying to layer that on top of other things. She's
Right.
also started to schedule rest into my calendar. A half hour here, an hour and a half there, where she just puts the word rest with an exclamation point. And I find those moments very sacred. And we've discussed ways that rest manifests. Sometimes that means take that time to do the laundry because you will not have another day or time to do the laundry, right? I live in
Right.
New York City. I don't have laundry in my unit, right? So I got to go
Right.
somewhere to do that. Sometimes that looks like me taking a 20-minute walk with my dog and turning off my devices. Sometimes that looks like me cooking myself a nice meal. Sometimes it looks like actual lay down, take a power nap, do the rest, right? So being able to assess what I need in the moment, it has been really, really helpful. And if I were to peg one thing as a big challenge from an entrepreneurial standpoint, is the sustainability factor. You know, you talked about burnout, right? And burnout, I just learned recently, the definition is really the chronic challenges at work that are not appropriately addressed or managed, right?
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that is it's like this chronic thing that's challenging that hasn't been addressed.
Right.
And when I think about that, I think about um, the constant need that we have as entrepreneurs to drive revenue, right? Because we still live in this patriarchal capitalistic society, right? So we have to have money to do the thing. Passion is
Right.
great. You know, someone once told me that like if you're not making any money, then it's really just a hobby, right? And so you
Oh
have to
yeah.
drive revenue. And I
Right.
think one of the biggest challenges is people don't understand necessarily what the arts can do for their teams, for their own health and wellness. And they're not interested in long-term solutions. We're often we want that silver bullet right now, here,
Yeah.
today. So we might get a workshop here, but we won't get the long-term contract that shares these techniques over a period of time. So we're trying to cram as much as possible into 90 minutes rather than
Right.
having 4 sessions across the year or something like that. So I would say, you know, we're overcoming that by pitching differently. But that has been, you know, something I've been like, how do we get folks to see that a one and done is not going to sustain your team? It's not going to sustain the community you're trying to communicate with about these particular public health topics.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty awesome. Well, thank you. And I mean, I'm seeing that like moving from an employee to an entrepreneur, that's like a
Yeah.
whole big beast all by itself. Because I've been like, oh my God, I'm like going back to school just to
Yes.
learn how to be an
Yes.
entrepreneur because there's so much different terminology and all of the other stuff. So I'm like totally in that space right now, Christina. So thank
You
you
get
for
it. You
sharing
get
that.
it.
Thank you for sharing that. Hey, I'm curious. I always ask my guests about those three wisdom gems that really could encourage someone. Like if you have someone out there, first, I'm going to go here before I go to the three nuggets.
Hmm.
Um, if you have someone, if there's someone listening right now and they have all of this passion that they want to do, but they are an employee and they are kind of like restless, like, oh my gosh, I wish I could do what my heart's telling me to do. Would you recommend anything to them? What would you recommend?
I think we all have a threshold, right? And they're like a risk threshold. And
Yes.
there are some of us who really need the 9 to 5 to be stable, and whatever that looks like, right? You need that job in as an employee so that you have more infrastructure behind
Right.
you, right? You've got the retirement plan, you've got the benefits, you've got the salary coming in on a regular basis. Those things are not bad.
No.
Those
No,
things
it's
are
awesome.
really great because they take something off of your mind. When you're an entrepreneur, those three things come back onto your plate. Um, so I would just say, assess your own risk tolerance. Do you have the bandwidth, the desire, the drive, the passion, the um the capacity to learn those things? And if
Yeah,
you do and you want to, go for it. Because betting on yourself can never be wrong. You If you think back on your life, I would say most people never let themselves down. And why start now? Right?
that's
So
awesome.
so if these things are important to you and you want to make that leap, go for it, I say. And if you don't, also great. Because one thing that I didn't ask myself when I made this jump was, do I want to be, well, I did ask myself, do I want to be my own boss? I said, yes, I do. Right. But did I ask myself, do I want to be HR? Do I want to be IT? Do I want to be the, lead generator? Do I want to be the manager? Do I want to be the producer? Do I want to be the executive director, the secretary, the banker, the bookkeeper? Do I want to be all of those roles? Because in the first few years of business, you are all of those things.
Yeah.
And talk about learning something new every day, right? I have learned something from each one of those categories over the
Yes.
last 4 years, right? So I guess all I'm saying is, if you don't want to do those things, that is perfectly okay. And it is better to know that than jump and understand that you are those things, right?
Right.
And there are, in this world where we have so much access to technology and people and opportunity, you should never think that you can't do more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So I'm not advocating for us piling on our plate way too high, because we can get into that problem too. But I am advocating that if you need to keep that 9 to 5 for whatever your reasons are, and you know them and you're clear about that, then do that other thing on the side. Make sure you get some joy. You bring in that hustle. Try to figure out how could you incorporate it into your practice, into the work that you're doing, where you're getting that 9 to 5. So you're actually getting paid to do it, but it's just for somebody else, right? It's within a different context than maybe you originally thought. Think outside the
Yeah.
box, accept where you're at, and don't be mad if the 9 to 5 is necessary for you.
Well, and I love that. I love that you said that because I wrote this chapter in this book that I was in, and it was birthing while working. And many of us, we can't just like automatically. I knew that I was going to be doing something more than what I was doing,
Yep.
but there was no way that I could separate from what I was doing yet. So I was like, you know what, this concept of actually birthing while you're working, hey, I'm going to do my job. And then after hours, then I'm working on my dream. I'm going to, a little bit, like 15 minutes at a time, 30 minutes at a time, whatever I can do, because it brought so much joy. It helped fuel me to stay put longer than I needed. You know what I mean? So it's really a great
Yes.
thing. I love what you said there because you don't have to um, foolishly jump out there before it's time because then you're going to like regret that you did it. So really listening to what you said is amazing. So thank you for that wisdom, Jim. Now let's go to the top three. Christina's top three. What are they?
Oh my gosh, I have no
I
idea.
know we put her on the spot, y'all.
Top three in what way? Can you
Let's just
contextualize
talk
that for me?
about just for fulfillment in life. It could be anybody, just because of where we are in our world, just sense where we are in the world, and what are three things that people can do to have more fulfillment in their life.
I mean, the
So,
first thing I'll say is get into some arts somewhere, some way, right? That could mean being in an audience somewhere for a concert. That could mean jamming a little bit on a guitar at your home, or playing a harmonica, right? I mean, just these like very simple things, singing in the shower, doodling while you're listening to a podcast, um, getting lost in a novel. These are all arts activities that you can do at the drop of a hat, right? They're accessible, they're not very expensive. You can get a library card and get into some books. You can also get, I think, still music and videos,
yeah,
and you can get all kinds of things at the library. So I highly, highly, highly advocate for our library systems. Um, But engage in the arts. It is going to buoy you. It is going to uplift you both cognitively, physically, and through community. So I highly recommend you get into the arts. That's number one. Number two, I would say take a break. This revolutionary rest on my calendar situation has been really lovely, and it has, again, empowered me to think about rest in different ways. um, how do I rest and help myself rejuvenate? How do I rest and make sure that my household is maintained? How do I rest and make sure that I am getting outside and being active? And then how do I physically lay down and just literally do nothing and sit down, right? Just sit.
Yes. Yes.
So rest and really try. Rest is resistance, right? We have uh there's a book, Rest is Resistance. I highly recommend. Folks we need to stop the grind culture. So rest is my second thing.
That's
And
beautiful.
then I would say the third thing is try to find some laughter somewhere, some way. Whether that be with your family, whether that be in those small videos on the internet, the dog that tries to jump on the couch and falls off,
Yeah.
and it's pretty funny, right? Um, or even just pretending to laugh, like giving yourself a fake laugh that then should trick your brain into generating some actual laughter, right?
Yeah.
These are things that we really need, especially right now. We have a very polarized country. We have wars in various parts of the world that are really important that we pay attention to. We have economic challenges. We're in a time in the world where there's a cacophony of shit, excuse me for my language, but like there's a lot of stuff, right? But we can always try to find laughter, we can always try to find art, and we can always try to find rest so that we can manage all of those things.
Yeah. Absolutely. You see, you dug them up. That was good.
I wonder how many are the same from before. I don't know.
No, no, no. You're in a different space before.
Different
So
space,
they were
that's true.
different. So you guys got to go back and see her episode from before.
See
So,
how much has
Chris,
changed.
yes, a lot has changed and it's beautiful. So, why don't you tell us, Christina, how, if there's an organization out there or someone that wants to be a part of what you're doing, can you give them some information?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. So, if you want to hear more about Elevate Theater Company, feel free to look us up at elevatetheatercompany.com. Theater is spelled Theatre. So, make sure you get that RE in there. We're also on Instagram at Elevate Theater Company. And if you'd like to email directly, info@elevatetheatercompany.com. We are really interested in engaging folks in workshops. We have two new plays that are being developed as we speak. One that is on mental health and mental health access, mental health. How do we engage in mental health? But also, it talks about gun violence, political polarization. It's called Line to Hope, and it's by Courtney Alex. The second play that's being developed is about AI in the medical space, and how does that impact how we are thinking about the use of AI for supporting individuals with various cognitive or physical challenges. How does that impact creativity? And that's by Chelsea D. Has no title yet because it's in the early stages, but we want to engage in these topics. So if this sounds like something that's interesting to you, please go ahead and reach out. info@elevatetheatercompany.com.
Great. Well, it has been such an honor to have you back. I mean, I love your energy. I love what you're doing. I so believe in the work that you're doing. And so thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Charlene. It has been a pleasure, and it is so fantastic to watch your journey. I feel like we're on parallel, like joy tracks, right? We're
Yeah.
trying to get to the place, and the journey has been really wonderful to witness. So, thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your continued uplift in the work that you're doing. It really, really matters.
I want to thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of When the Moment Chooses You. I'm your host, Coach Charlene, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Each journey we've shared today is a reminder that when the moment chooses you, the possibilities are endless.